My journey to improve my property for whitetails started back in 2020 during the pandemic. During this time, I started watching a bunch of YouTube videos, reading books, and listening to podcasts to learn and soak in as much as I could on how to set up my property to hold and attract big and older age class bucks. It's June 8th, 2024. We're back here on my parents' property doing some timber stand improvement this weekend. We have a contract with the NRCS to do approximately 3 acres of buckthorn removal, ironwood, and honeysuckle. Tomorrow, my buddy Brian Nelson's going to be out here. He's going to be using his new Genesis drill to plant approximately 1.5 acres of corn. I think this is a good start, good kickoff to the season. Starting with the big picture, I looked at my property in relation to the surrounding neighbor's land to determine travel patterns of the deer. To the east of me was a bunch of agriculture. That was the deer's main destination food source. To the west of my property was a large tract of woods where I knew a lot of bedding cover would be. In the evening, deer would get up from the bedding and naturally work their way east to the fields to feed, and come morning, work back across my property headed back to the big timber. Taking a closer look at my property, I looked at the needs of a deer. Deer need 3 main things for survival: food, water, and security. To make the deer feel secure on my property, I knew I needed to focus on providing a sanctuary for the deer to live in with very little human intrusion. To accomplish this, I focused a lot of my efforts on keeping the center of my property free of human scent and activity. My stands and access to them were strategically placed and mapped out to help me achieve this as well. Food is another essential factor for deer to survive and can really draw and attract deer to your property. The field on the north side of my property was set up nicely for adding a couple food plots. I added multiple smaller food plots throughout the field to try to keep the deer constantly moving across the field and avoid them from hanging up in one specific plot. This provided more opportunities for putting a deer within bow range and allowed for multiple stand locations to be hunted with varying wind directions. The third essential factor for deer to survive is water. On the south side of my property in the woods there is a swamp, so the deer have access to water. However, to provide another attraction for deer, one of the first changes I made to the property was adding a small water hole on the far north end of the property just inside the woods. The pond behind me has probably been one of the best additions to my parents' property. 3 years ago we installed this pond, and we get thousands of pictures on it every year. With the hot summer months and the stress put on deer during the rut, this has been a great spot for a stand location. In the past 3 years of hunting, my brother has harvested 2 nice bucks coming to the pond for a drink. One was during the peak rut in 2022 and the other in late September of this past year. To allow me to get into my stands easier and provide deer with the sense of security to come out in the field to my food plots during daylight hours, I planted a bunch of switchgrass for screening. I frost-seeded switchgrass in the fall 2 years ago. Switchgrass has to go through a process known as stratification, a freeze-thaw cycle for the seeds in the winter. The reason I planted the switchgrass was for a barrier between the upper field, which is where I have all my food plots, and the rest of my parents' property. My stand locations are set up on the boundaries of my property to give the deer as big of a sanctuary as possible. The stand on the north side of my property is hunted on a south wind, blowing all my scent into my neighbor's large horse pasture. The stand overlooking my clover plot in the woods is only about 10 yards outside of the sheep pasture. This stand works well for a west-southwest wind blowing my scent back into the sheep pasture and along my access route to the stand. The last stand I have is set up on the southern property boundary just inside the woods at the crest of a steep hillside. I have this ladder stand hung high in the tree to blow my scent out over the valley below. The thermals make this stand a good stand to hunt in the mornings on a north wind. The 2024 season was a great season. On my first sit of the year, I saw multiple family groups of does and the target buck that I was going after. Unfortunately, he came in right before dark, and I wasn't able to get my bow and everything set up in time to take a shot before he trotted off. My brother, on his second sit of the season over the pond, shot a really nice Pope and Young 8-pointer, scoring about 126 inches. During the first week in November, I hunted really hard and saw a lot of deer, but never one that I actually wanted to shoot. A lot of nice deer made it through the season that I'm pumped to hunt next year. Thanks again for watching my video, and good luck hunting.